Hello students. In our previous lectures, we have discussed about the various aspects of the digestive system, about the oropharyngeal cavity, the mouth, where the food is chewed, enters into the esophagus and enters into the stomach. The digestion of the food starting from the stomach, the action of the various enzymes like pepsin and the acidic conditions that are present in the stomach, how they aid in the digestion. And further the food passes through the duodenum, okay, where the activity of the pancreatic juices and the secretions from the liver and bile, they help in further digesting the food. And from the duodenum the food enters into the small intestine, that is the ileum, and then the jejunum, and then it enters into the large intestine, where the absorption of excess water takes place, and ultimately the digested and assimilated food is ejected out. So in today's class we will be discussing a few experiments on the digestion as well as a few practical aspects of the food tests, because all of you know that the food is composed of carbohydrates. Okay, the food contains carbohydrates, fats, proteins. Okay, so carbohydrates, fats and proteins are the major constituents. In addition, there will be the minerals, vitamins and other substances. Under carbohydrates we discussed about the monosaccharides, disaccharides, polysaccharides. Okay, so under the monosaccharides, that is a single sugar, which is the most important example we discussed, that was glucose, right? Glucose. Now glucose is readily assimilated by the body. Generally the food that we consume, we don't take directly glucose, right? We take starch. Okay, we take starch. What is starch? Starch is a polymer. Okay, it is a polymer of glucose, that is, so many glucose molecules are linked together as a long chain. Okay, they're very long chains with thousands of glucose molecules are linked together. So when we eat this rice, wheat, maize, okay, all of these are starch foods. Okay, potato, so they contain the starch. The starch is a polymer of glucose. So what the saliva does, the saliva has an enzyme that is called the salivary amylase. Okay, we have discussed earlier salivary amylase. So this salivary amylase is going to break the starch into two glucose units, that is the maltose. Okay, maltose. Now how do we know that the enzyme amylase has digested the starch? Okay, now we have here two test tubes. Okay, and here we are able to see that there is a solution of starch. You know, starch does not dissolve properly in water. Okay, so when we cook rice, some of the times what happens, you see people will discard the excess water, okay, in the rice. So in Hindi we will say the mad or the starch that is being thrown away. Now that is rich in starch. Okay, that is rich in starch, and if you observe that it is not transparent. Okay, it is turbid like this. It is turbid because the starch does not completely dissolve in water. Okay, it does not form a solution. Okay, solution means what? Solution means it is a homogeneous mixture. So a homogeneous mixture is going to be transparent. It is going to allow the light to pass through it. Okay. But in the case of starch, what is happening? You are seeing that it is very turbid. Okay. Starch solution is very turbid. Now, suppose we prepared two test tubes. Okay. That is having the starch. Okay. So we dissolved a little bit of starch powder. Okay. That is rice powder, for example. Okay. Or you can use the maize powder. Okay. Rice powder, this one, or wheat powder, all of these have the starch. So you can take that, dissolve it in some amount of water, and you can add a little bit of saliva to it. Okay. And you need to allow it to incubate at a room temperature or at 38 degrees centigrade for some time. What is the temperature of our body? It is 37 degrees centigrade. Okay. So obviously whatever enzymes are there in our body, they will be most active at what temperature? They will be active at the body temperature, that is 37 degrees centigrade. Okay. The room temperature is not 37 degrees. Correct, not always 37 degrees. So depending upon whatever the room temperature is, because it is varying from place to place, what we will do is we will keep these test tubes in a water bath. Okay, which is at 37 degrees centigrade or 38 degrees centigrade. Okay. So what is going to happen? The enzyme amylase that is present in the saliva will break down the starch into maltose. Okay. Now what we will do? We will add iodine solution to the test tubes. When you add iodine, the iodine is going to react with starch. Okay. So iodine with starch gives the blue black color. Okay, depending upon how much starch is there. If there is a lot of starch, it will give almost black color. If there is very less amount of starch is there, it will give more like a bluish color. Okay. So now what has happened in this one, what you are able to see, this test tube number 1 is not showing any blue color, but test tube number 2, that we did not add the saliva, it is showing the blue color. That means what? The starch is not converted into the simple sugar maltose. Okay. If it is converted into the simple sugar maltose, like in this test tube, it is not giving the reaction with iodine. Okay. So this particular tube is positive for iodine. It is giving blue color. That means starch is present. Here also we dissolved starch, but because we added the saliva broke down the starch into maltose, and that is why we did not get the positive test for iodine. Okay, there is starch is broken down. Okay, so this is a very good experiment by which you can visualize the action of saliva on starch. Okay. Similarly, you can also look at the action of pepsin. Okay. Pepsin. What is pepsin? Pepsin is an enzyme. Where is this enzyme? This enzyme is secreted in the stomach. Okay. It is secreted in the stomach, in the gastric juice. So, what is the action of the pepsin? It is going to break down the protein. Okay. Now, if you take the egg white, okay, when you boil the egg, so the albumin or the white part, okay, that will become hard, right? Now that if you take a small piece of it, okay, you add acid. So you have 3 test tubes here, okay. You have taken equal volumes of water. Then you add a little bit of this egg white, boiled one, or you can add a small piece of meat. Either one is fine. Okay, meat is also having protein. You can add a little bit of meat. You can add a little bit of egg white. Okay, all of these are protein. You can add that one. In the second tube, what you did, you add the enzyme pepsin. In third tube, what you did, you add both pepsin plus HCl, acid and enzyme, both you added. Okay, dilute acid. Now what is going to happen? You can see that in test tube number 1, this protein is remain as it is. In second tube, what happened? You can see that it is become turbid. Okay, and a little bit of that protein is digested. But what about the third tube? The total piece of meat or egg white is disappeared. Where has it gone? It is digested. It is broken down by the action of the enzyme. What is the enzyme? Pepsin. Under what condition? In the presence of the acid HCl. Under acidic conditions. In the stomach there is the acid is produced. Which acid is produced in the stomach? Hydrochloric acid, HCl is produced. Okay, so this enzyme pepsin requires that acidic condition for its action, and that is what we are seeing. Okay, in test tube number 3, both enzyme and acid is there. Then totally the piece of meat has disappeared, that piece of egg white has disappeared, the protein is digested. Now we can do one more thing. We can take another test tube number 4 and we can add, say, sodium bicarbonate. Okay, if you add sodium bicarbonate, it is going to neutralize the acid. Okay, HCl is there, it is going to neutralize this acid, and then you can see what is going to happen. Then what is going to happen? Then the meat is not going to digest properly. Okay, it is not going to digest properly. It will look more like the test tube number 2. Okay, that is going to further, you can confirm that acid pH is required for the best activity, for the optimum activity of the enzyme pepsin. Okay, so all the enzymes, they have certain optimum pH at which they will function, right? Next we move on to the some of the food tests. Now glucose test is one of the most important tests. Okay, there is an increasing number of people with diabetes these days, and therefore there is a requirement that most of the diabetic patients need to confirm, to check their blood glucose levels from time to time. Now the most uh, initial methods of the testing of the glucose was using a particular reagent which is called as the Fehling's solution. Fehling's solution. So what this Fehling's solution does? You have two test tubes here. Okay, test tube number 1, test tube number 2. You have taken in test tube number 1 just plain water. Okay, and in that one you have added this Fehling's solution. In test tube number 2 you have taken the glucose solution, and to that you added the Fehling's reagent or Fehling's solution. Now what is going to happen after we heat it? Okay, you need to heat. After you add the reagent, we need to heat this. So after we heat, if there is a glucose in the test tube, then what is going to happen? It is going to give this reddish brown precipitate. You see reddish brown color. This reddish brown color will appear if there is a glucose. So that is one of the deep brick red color. Okay, and over time it will also give some kind of precipitate. If it is left alone, slowly it can give a precipitate. This is one way to know that if there is a glucose in the sample. Sucrose, that is the table sugar. The table sugar is not going to give positive reaction. Glucose will give positive reaction. Okay. Uh, Suppose we are testing for fructose. What is fructose? You know that fructose is present in the fruits. Okay. So fructose is also going to give the positive reaction. Okay, that is if you are taking the apple juice or grape juice, whether it will give a positive reaction, it will give positive reaction. Okay. Suppose it is done on a person that is diabetic, from the urine of that person, whether it will give the positive reaction. This brick red color, it will give the positive reaction. If you take sucrose, it will also not give positive reaction, but if you heat it and if you add some little bit of acid and then you neutralize and then you do this reaction, it will give the positive reaction. Okay, that is a modified method. If you do a modification like that, heating, adding acid, neutralizing, all those kind of things, there is going to be a change in the conformation of that sucrose. There is going to be, you remember that sucrose is what? Sucrose is nothing but glucose plus fructose. Okay, and glucose is going to give positive reaction. So if you heat the sucrose with the acid, what is going to happen? The sucrose is made up of glucose plus fructose. So if you heat it and add acid, both of these will break, okay, into their individual monosaccharides, and glucose is going to give the positive reaction. Okay, that is why sucrose will give negative reaction, but if you heat it and then add acid and then you do this neutralization and you check, it will get the positive reaction. Okay. Next, test for starch, like we have seen here. This is like test tube number 1, which is having the iodine solution in plain water. Okay, this is what we say is a blank tube. Okay, it is not having any sample. Okay, the second one is a simple starch solution. So we'll take a little bit of starch. Okay, mix it in water. That is a starch. Now the third one is we have added a few drops of iodine solution to this. So how it is appearing? Almost, you see, it's almost like a black, dark blue or black color. Okay, so this is what we say the iodine test. So even if you take, for example, potato, and if you add a drop of iodine, it will change to what color? Almost like a blue black color. It will change into blue black color. Okay, that is a excellent test for starch. Now test for protein. Okay, for protein, what happens is, if you take a always we take one test tube as a blank to know that without the sample, without the protein or without the carbohydrate, what you will get. So that you should know. Okay, so here first what we are doing for the test of protein, we are taking a little bit of that egg white. Okay, in this case we are not boiled it, we just taken the liquid egg white, and then that solution has to be a few drops of nitric acid, concentrated nitric acid is added to that one, and then it is heated, allowed to cool, and then we add a little bit of concentrated nitric acid. Okay, and then what you do, you heat it and then you allow it to cool. Okay, and then you have to neutralize it with ammonium hydroxide. Okay, with ammonium hydroxide you are going to neutralize it. Then what is going to happen, it is going to change its color from white. Okay, the egg white solution is going to appear white, and then it is going to change into yellow, and then after neutralization it is going to change into orange. Okay, so this kind of the change of color you are going to observe. Okay, then you can say that there is some protein present in this sample. Okay, So this is one of the ways you can test for the presence of protein in a given sample. How do you test for the fats or oils? This is very simple. Just if you are taking, for example, a peanut, okay, or pizza, burger, whatever, any fat cooking oil, okay, and you are a little bit, either you rub it on a paper, okay, you take here, for example, water and allow it to dry for some time, and against light, if you observe, then the cooking oil or the fats or oils, it will appear translucent. Translucent, okay, it will appear kind of a translucent. Translucent, okay, cent, translucent, it will appear translucent, okay, and here that will not happen with the water, okay. Then another very simple test is for whether there is a moisture or water content in the sample. How do we know? So here what you are seeing, this paper, okay, this paper is basically cobalt chloride, okay, cobalt chloride paper. So what happens, cobalt chloride, it appears blue in color, but once there is moisture or water, it will convert into what? Red color, okay. So in this way you can easily know whether there is a uh, red or pink color, okay. You can know that whether there is moisture in the sample. So these were some of the food tests, okay, that are covered in your textbook. In addition, there is also a test for minerals. So what happens is that, to know that what are the minerals that are present, like a calcium, magnesium, iron, cobalt, nickel, so we need to burn that sample, okay, and it is burned very thoroughly in a crucible, such that you are left with some ash, because whatever the carbon content is there, what is going to happen to the carbon? The carbon is going to completely oxidize into carbon dioxide, change into gas, and it will be evaporated, or it will go into the gaseous state, okay. So what is going to remain, okay, what is going to remain are the minerals, okay, the metals, okay, metals, minerals, okay, non-metals, all of these kind of substances will remain there, okay. Those are all the ones that can be determined using the different kinds of tests are there, which are not covered in our syllabus, okay. So for mineral determination, that can be done, okay. So with this we cover the chapter on digestion. We will start with the new chapter in our next class. Thank you.